Hi, it's Gwyneth here on a Fabulous Feelgood Friday. And you know, one of my things is to help you feel as good about yourself as you possibly can so that you really do go out into the world, share your gift, whatever it is, with other people. Yesterday, it really hit home to me yesterday. One of the things I say about feeling good about yourself is to stop watching the news and reading the newspapers. Now, clearly, right now, we need to be aware of what is going on, restrictions in the country we're in, etc. But somebody posted then something about some new restrictions in Austria, and I'm like, wow, I really haven't been watching the news recently. Nothing serious, but thank you to that person for having, posted in the group telling the Brits in Austria what's going on. Now, today I want to do something a little bit different because I've been fortunate enough over the past couple of weeks to be able to deliver a couple of workshops. I was at the VIC. I was in Vienna last week. Thank goodness I was in Vienna last week because that is now out the window. That's stopped. And Wednesday and this afternoon again, I'm going to be doing an online training session about emotional intelligence using Zoom. And so I want to give you a tiny excerpt from the emotional intelligence workshop because so many people feel, I'm going to say, hopeless. We're hearing more about redundancies, and on the one hand, people are saying, I'm responsible for myself, and on the other hand, they're looking to government saying you should be looking after us better. And there's a lot of confusion around how to actually manage our well-being ourselves, especially if you are already feeling, you're uncertain about your job and all those things. And by the way, if you are ever uncertain about your job and you want any help, please do get in touch. I also have a lot of free resources, not just paid resources. Okay, I forgot to turn off my email ding dong. Anyway, so I just want to share with you over the next few minutes. I want to explain to you why there is, in many cases, a misalignment between how you're feeling and where you want to be. Because every time you feel bad, every time you feel uncertain, fearful, upset, any of those kind of angry, negative emotions, every time you feel any of those things, it is a clear indication that you are not allowing yourself to be who you are. You're not allowing your personality to shine through. You're not able to accept yourself and acknowledge yourself for the fabulous human being that you are. So I'm going to give you a little presentation just over a few minutes now. I'm going to share my screen. I just got a couple of slides from my presentation. And so you may or may not be familiar with this. This is Maslow's Triangle. Maslow was a management theorist, wrote a lot of great stuff back in the last century. And Maslow talked about his hierarchy of needs. At the very basic level, we need food, shelter, air to breathe, clean water, and all the rest of it. Now you can see that slide yourself. I'm not going to read it all the way through. But so whereas Maslow talked about this as a hierarchy of needs, about how we develop socially, if you like, what I've also done is I've added into this a timeline. Now, the timeline I'm using is Western Europe, England in particular, to help you better understand what's happening. So the physiological needs, that's probably talking about the end of the 1800s in England in particular. People couldn't drink water. They were still drinking beer because the water was so filthy. People didn't have a change of clothes. They lived, they slept in doorways. And it was only the very wealthy, the elite, if you like, that had somewhere to live. Safety and security is really important. This came in a big way after the end of the Second World War, at a time also when the United Nations was set up. And all we wanted as human beings after all of those horrors, and anybody who's been through war since then either, was to actually be, have peace, feel secure, don't want any ruckuses or anything going on anywhere. This was also a time where governments became a lot more, shall I say, closer to the people, but the people were looking towards governments to keep them safe, to keep them secure, to ensure that there was no more conflict. Love and belonging, swinging 60s, hippie era, whatever you want to call it, where people were out having a great time, and free love, free lots of things. Self-esteem, that came along in the 1980s. That started to become more important, and it went into the 90s. And one of the reasons that I believe that self-esteem, this whole thing about confidence, achievement, respect of others, the need to be a unique individual. Just think back to the 80s if you're old enough, and 90s. That was when technology started impacting our lives, when we started, getting not laptops then, but computers, the brick, the mobile phone, and all of these things. But those items, they really were status symbols. That self-esteem, it's like, I've got a mobile phone, I've got one in my car. It was all very much self-esteem and status. And a lot of banks, in the US in particular, they went under because all of a sudden there was a paper trail that could actually prove there was actually evidence of what was going on in some of these places. And self-actualization, well, that is kind of where we are at the moment, sort of since the beginning of 2000s. We want to know that we have a sense of purpose, that we're making an impact, we're making a contribution. We are exploring a lot more in ourselves, our inner potential. And if you are an employee somewhere, particularly in an organization where there is a strict hierarchy, you are probably going to find that you don't particularly like people telling you, well, I know what to do, I know my job, I don't need you to tell me how to do my job. So emotionally, and regardless of where you are in the world, regardless of whether you're in Western Europe or elsewhere, emotionally, this is how we all develop on one level or another. And like I said, a lot of people in the world have actually catapulted themselves to the top of the triangle. The issue is, when you are living in this type of a hierarchy, which we all still live in, there is a mismatch in how we feel about what's going on. If you're in a business, if you're in an organization, somewhere in the UN system, then you're always going to have somebody at the top, and there are always going to be people down the bottom. If you can even look at governments, that a prime minister or a president, there's always going to be somebody at the top who is kind of responsible in some way for making sure that everything beneath them is working. Now, in an organization, this hierarchy is, of course, absolutely critical to ensure that there are checks and balances, there's accountability for money, delegation of work, management of people, and all that kind of thing. In a governmental perspective, this means that, in some countries, that person takes the decision, although they don't take the decision on their own. Well, some people do, but they've got they've got their parliament, they've got their MPs, they've got their people around them to advise them, the equivalent of their senior managers. Now, in some places where people actually are able to vote without fear of their vote being, I don't know, what's the word, without fraudulent voting, I'm going to say, people might feel that they do actually still have a contribution. But the thing is about triangles, whenever you've got a top-down thing going on, emotionally there is going to be a conflict, because on the one hand, back in the 40s, after the First World War, when we wanted safety, when we wanted security, when we wanted peace, when we accepted that it was academics and mostly men who were in businesses, organizations, the United Nations, and all these places, we accepted all that. We wanted to be looked after. There weren't too many people, protesting after the Second World War, specifically, who were saying, down with government, down, it was like, help us, we want peace, we want safety. So from that time, like I say, we accepted that that was how society should be. And the issue today is that although we have moved on emotionally, as Maslow told us we would, up to our self-actualization, wanting to make a contribution, wanting to be recognized, wanting to be acknowledged, the hierarchies that we live in don't allow us to be emotionally open. And many people, and I have this in every single workshop I ever deliver, many people confuse the hierarchy that they're in, be that a business, an organization, somewhere in the UN. They confuse that hierarchy with social status. Somebody's above me, a supervisor's above me, I can't go and talk to them about this because they're my supervisor, I have to be respectful. And that comes, you know, like I said, from 70 years ago, crumbs, almost 80 years ago, from when we just wanted everything to be peaceful. That's just the way we were. So my challenge to you this week, and I know this is a slightly longer video, but this is really important because this comes up time and time again, which is why I wanted to share it with you, share these few slides from my presentation, is that we will always need managers, we will always need heads of government, we will always need heads of organizations, businesses, we will always need somebody to kind of delegate and make sure that, you know, yeah, the money's being spent properly. We are always going to need somebody who potentially you can look up to for help or support or inspiration or motivation or mentoring or coaching or whatever it is that you want from somebody. But what we have to do emotionally is to actually flip that triangle and focus first and foremost on ourselves. We have to be willing to ask ourselves first, what do I need to be able to feel better? Instead of purely, you know, looking up to this point and saying, that's what I want. Now, the inverted triangle does not mean that you are carrying everybody else, you are carrying the world's problem on your shoulders. In absolutely no way, Jose, is that what I mean. That inverted triangle of leadership means that, like I said, you are willing to put yourself first. You are willing to have that open conversation with people. I need this support. I want this motivation. I think this is wrong. Because when you can allow yourself to be who you really are, which of course means that potentially you're going to feel vulnerable, you're potentially going to feel a little bit scared of telling other people what you think. But I promise you that when you're actually in a position to do that, that inverted triangle, what it means is that your life expands. And the top-down pressure that so many people find or feel becomes completely, it's a different opening. You feel open, you feel more confident about yourself, you feel more comfortable about yourself, and all of those things. So there you are. I know it's a little bit different, but particularly as I see on the news this morning, you know, we're going down, many places are talking about going back down into lockdown over the next couple of months. I am going to do another webinar on how this is affecting our well-being, our wellness, and I will send you details if you're on my mailing list about that. But think about this, that if you're feeling bad, it's a clear indication that at some level you are not allowing yourself to be at the top of Maslow's triangle, that you are still staying within the hierarchy triangle that we created for ourselves socially, that you are still feeling powerless, looking for somebody else, making somebody else responsible, or resenting how they treat you. Look, you know, I'm feeling this pressure coming down on you, as opposed to actually saying, okay, this is how I'm feeling. What could I do about it? And allowing yourself to open up, be vulnerable, potentially be a little bit scared. But at the end of the day, if you can put your hand on your heart, like I always say to people in interview coaching, if you can put your hand on your heart and say, I've done what I can, life becomes a lot easier if you can acknowledge and accept yourself. And on that note, I wish you a fabulous Feel Good Friday, an amazing weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay fabulous. Loads of love and bye for now.